In this tutorial, I will show you how to work with Google Maps in ORM. There are several ways to display a Google Map in ORM. Probably the quickest one is to put it on a form of some business object. For more details about ORM forms, please watch the forms tutorial. You would put a Google Map on a form usually to show an address of a person whose form it is. And usually the map shows just this one address. Let me show you how to do this. Here I have an application from the previous tutorials that manages customers. A customer has a first name, last name, street address, date of birth, postcode, city, state, and other attributes. We have a few forms for the customer object. One to create the customer, one to edit it, and one to search for it. You can see the forms here. Now let's display a Google Map showing the address of the customer on a separate tab of the editing form. When we put a Google Map on a form, we need to indicate an attribute that stores the full address of the customer, which includes his street address, city, state, and so on. Usually these values are stored in separate attributes. There are separate attributes for state, city, and others, as is the case with our customer object. The solution is usually to define another calculated attribute that stores the full address, and a business rule that would concatenate different parts of the address into the full address suitable for displaying on a Google Map. We have such an attribute in the object called address, and this is the rule that calculates the full address. So now I will add a new form section to the editing form that will show the address attribute on a Google Map. I will call this section Map, and there is a special cell type called Google Maps, and we need to add this cell to our form. Unfortunately, ORM doesn't allow us to add this cell directly, but we will create a blank row first, and then change its type to Google Map. Now we need to specify the attribute where the full address is stored, so we select the address attribute. We will also specify width and height for the Google Map. There are a number of options here, but for now I will only turn the markers on. Let's see how this works in the browser. So I put the version under test and log into the application. In my application, the visual perspective immediately shows the customers that I have in the upper half of the screen. The output of the query that shows the customers is directed to the lower half of the screen. For example, I can display a form of the selected customer there. So let's see the form of the first one. When I open the form, I can now see the Map tab. And when I click on it, I can see the map with the address of the customer. Let's now look at some options that we have for Google Maps. We go back to the Google Maps cell, and here we can turn on some controls for the map. I will turn on zoom control, scale, and street view control. I will also specify what happens when the marker on the map is clicked. I will choose Get Directions so that the map can show directions from some address to the customer address. Let's see how it looks now. So when we log into the application again, display the form of the customer, and go to its map, we can see some new controls. And when we click on the marker, we can specify the from address, and then we get directions from this address to the customer address. What if we want to show multiple addresses on a Google map? For example, show addresses of all or particular customers. There are two ways to do it. Define a presentation for the customer object and include the Google Map element into this presentation, or define a Google Map as part of the static HTML for some content panel of some visual perspective. For more details about this, please watch the Visual Perspectives tutorial. I will show you how to do this using static HTML, because this feature has some extra flexibility not available when you create a presentation. Let's look at the static HTML feature in any visual perspective. We open the Administrator Visual Perspective and add some content panel, just for testing. Then we go to the contents of this content panel and select Show Static HTML. Then we go to the HTML editor. Using a drop-down on the right-hand side, we can add predefined elements to our HTML. One of the elements is Google Map, and that's what we're going to use here. In order to use this element, we can provide two queries. The one that determines how markers are displayed on the map, and the one that shows polygons. Using polygons, you can mark certain regions on your map, for example, countries, states, and so on. Both queries are optional, so you can display either markers or polygons or both. I will talk about polygons a little later. In this exercise, we will be using a query for markers that will show addresses of several customers. Let's say that we want to show a Google map of all customers that live in California. The user presses some button and the Google map is displayed in the area underneath the list of customers. So first we need to define a query that finds all customers living in California. The query should be pretty simple. Customer state equals CA. We don't need to worry how this query is displayed, because it will only be used in our Google Map. We now need to display a content panel of some visual perspective and specify static HTML for this panel to include a Google Map. This can be done using the display layout action that can show a particular tab of a particular perspective. So we need to create a perspective with one tab and then write a process that would show this tab using the display layout action. For more details about processes, please watch the processes tutorial. So let's create a visual perspective. We'll call it map with one tab and one content panel. So I click on the contents for the content panel, select Show Static HTML, and go to the HTML editor. In the drop-down on the right, I select the Google Map. For the query defining the markers, I select our customers in California query, and the attribute storing the address will be address. I will also add some options to the map. Select the smaller initial zoom scale because customers will be far apart, and I will select zoom control and scale controls. We can now create the element. When we do this, a variable creates a special div element representing the map. We do not need to understand what's inside this element, but if you know some HTML, you can modify some of its attributes. I will just add a style to specify width and height of the map. Let's now write the process that shows this content panel. The process should be pretty simple. Just display layout from our visual perspective. And as a final step, let's add an operation to the query that shows customers. This operation will start this process. Let's see now how this works. So now, when we log in, we see the new button, and when I click on it, the map with all our Californian customers is displayed. Let me say a few words about the polygons feature. It is a powerful feature that allows you to mark certain regions on your map, for example countries, states, and so on. The map that shows countries is available in the Sales Portal sample application. Let's have a look at it. So now we can see the Sales Portal sample application, and here there is the world map with the countries marked as polygons. Depending on the number of sales in a particular country, some polygons are even displayed with a different background color. To implement polygons on your map, you need to provide a query that finds objects storing polygon information in a special KML format. This format is a variation of XML where you define a region as polygon of points, and for each point you provide its coordinates. KML data for many regions is available on the internet in a public domain, and you can easily download it, populate some of your objects with it, and then define a query that looks for these objects. Let's look at this query in the Sales Portal application. The query is looking for an object called the country sales record. And if we look at this object, there is a KML-SC attribute there that stores KML information. We can use item rules of a query to display polygons with different background colors. Here in this query, if we go to item rules, we can see different colors depending on the number of sales. Once we have the query looking for an object that stores KML information for a polygon, we can provide the query and the attribute to the Google Map HTML element in a visual perspective, just like we did it before. Well, this tutorial is a good overview of how you can work with Google Maps in a Where I Am. For more details, please refer to the user guide.